Welcome back to KC Talks EV. So if you haven't already realised from the title of this video, it is now time to do the 20,000 mile update video on my MG ZS EV. If you haven't already, please click on that subscribe button and click on that bell icon so you are informed of future notifications. And without further ado, let's get started. So let's get straight into the cost element. So total cost, and I will put a table down here so you can follow on, is £141.75 for these 10,000 miles. That equates to approximately 1.4 pence per mile. Again, that does not include the BP Pulse/Polar fee, which is £7.85 a month for approximately 9 months, which is £70.65. Therefore, including that would be 2.1 pence per mile. To complete that, those 10,000 miles, 2,877 kilowatt hours of energy was used, meaning an overall efficiency throughout that time was 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. I just want to say that, especially in terms of efficiency, the odd kilowatt hour would have been missed. The reason why is, and I'll get a bit more in detail on the free charging element, but a lot of these free chargers don't measure the amount of kilowatt hours, or what I've had to do in that case is take an educated guess. So for example, if I was at a charger for 90 minutes at 6.6 kilowatt, that would be approximately 10 kilowatt hours into the car, obviously excluding any inefficiencies. So for this particular 10,000 mile portion, I was able to do a substantial portion of it on free at source charging. So compared to the previous 10,000 miles, which was around 25%, I was able to do 50% on free charging. Now, obviously, this will be wildly different depending on your particular circumstances, and this is definitely not representative, I would say. Especially, for example, if you have free workplace charging, you will be able to use a lot more higher percentage of kilowatt hours from free sources. I do say at source because you do have to take into account, for my situation, the BP Pulse fee. So for example, in September, October, November 2020, I was able to do the vast majority of my charging, because I was up in Sunderland, on the free 7 kilowatt point nearby to where I was living on the Polar network. So that was about 548 kilowatt hours. In fact, the entire month of November 2020, I was able to do completely free at source, and all I was paying was the £7.85 a month for my BP Pulse membership. Again, this is going to be purely circumstantial. As I mentioned in my 10,000 mile video, I did have to rely on that 7 kilowatt point, as I did not have any home charging arrangement at the time, so I had to rely on that 7 kilowatt point, but luckily it was nearby my house. The other place where I've been able to get quite a lot of my free charging is just out and about. So you're looking at the Tesco pod points nearby, and even in Sunderland, I was able, when I was doing my shopping, I was able to charge up. In fact, I might have some footage here of me charging up at a pod point in the Tesco at St Stephen's, and I always do follow Bjorn Neeland's ABCs, which is always be charging. So in terms of servicing, if you follow on from the previous video, at the time it didn't reach the service interval, which for the ZS EV is 15,000 miles or 1 year, whichever is sooner, whereas now obviously I've reached the service interval. So I actually paid £180 for my first service. If I'm perfectly honest, I know that was quite a lot of money, and I will be looking elsewhere for subsequent services. I did not expect it to be that expensive, if I'm honest, but I just needed it doing. Given the circumstances, it was February 2021, and I didn't really want to go elsewhere, so I just took it straight to my main dealer. Especially when it comes to an EV, whereby apart from brakes, servicing, suspension, and topping of the windscreen washer fluid, actually, there really isn't anything that needs to be replaced or checked. Maybe the pollen filter, and I think that happens on the major service anyway. So the more EV-centric area would be things like plugging it into the onboard computer to determine battery state of health or capacity, which for some reason, if you have a look at the maintenance check sheet that I did receive, I didn't actually get for some reason. By the way, that's just a post-it note. It's just purely because it has my VIN number and stuff like that in. With the ZS EV, or any MG car in particular, your service record is actually held online, not in the standard logbook contained alongside your manual. So I'm not quite sure what will happen when I do go to an independent dealer. I'm sure that things like just keeping the full service history will be okay, but I will ask at that point. One more cost that I did incur, and I really hope that no one else does, this was really my bad, or on my part at least, is that due to corrosion by using metal dust caps, I needed to replace 2 TPMS sensors at £160 including VAT. I completely forgot to put some copper grease to prevent or at least reduce the amount of galvanic corrosion that occurs. And basically what happened was it completely destroyed the top of the valve and it needed a complete replacement because I couldn't actually pump up my tyres afterwards. So it was an expensive lesson, but I guess it's a lesson learned nevertheless. One thing you do get when you do service your car, which I completely forgot to mention, was the MG Assistant. So this is part of, well, whenever you get it serviced, it tops up for another 12 months. It does, I think, as far as I'm aware, help you out if you do get stranded because you run out of charge. It takes you to the nearest charger. So that is kind of useful, but to be honest, I'm sure that you can always arrange that somewhere else. And I mean, at most that might cost £40–50 as far as I'm aware, especially with a car as young as this one. So yeah, so that's pretty much servicing covered. So I guess this is the other section. So have I had any issues? Well, there's not really any issues to report when it comes to the ZS EV. I did take my car to the dealer while, I think it was just after it was serviced, to have the updated BMS update. So I didn't receive the dodgy BMS that was issued out to cars between October 2020 and January 2021. By the way, I have done a video on the range and the charging curve, which you can have a look at here somewhere. Another thing as well is about the lights that I fitted. So it was approximately 1 year ago actually that I fitted PIAA Hyper Aros 3900 Kelvin bulbs. So these bulbs are slightly whiter, meaning that normally you get less longevity, although to be fair, after a year and 10,000 miles, it hasn't, I mean, they still work, they haven't died as of yet. Of course, I will update you at some point if they do, probably in the next 30,000 mile update video. So yeah, no major issues to report. I have had the updated BMS, and apart from that, everything's all good. The only thing else actually is about timed charging. I haven't had actually any ability to test that, primarily because I'm still using the aftermarket board in my Rolex charger. I did do a video on that as well. You can have a look at here. And time charging's been working absolutely brilliantly, so I haven't really had any necessity to trial it again and go through all of that. The only thing that has happened though with the time charging board is I had to plug in some power line adapters, and for some reason I have a feeling that they actually knocked the board out of whack and that needed a reset. But after a reset, it was absolutely fine. So in terms of tyre tread depths, I didn't actually go over that in the 10,000 mile review video, but I thought I'd go over it for this one. So I do have a diagram here. So on the front, they are approximately 4mm, and on the rears, they are 5mm. That coincides quite well actually with what the maintenance sheet, record sheet actually says. So at the time, which was 14,000 miles in February 2021, they were 5.7mm on the front and 6mm on the rear. Good news is they are quite consistent across, even though unfortunately I have an analog tyre depth gauge, not a digital one, so it's going to be less precise, but they are fairly consistent across the sides. So that means that there's no uneven wear at least. I don't really have that many points of comparison, primarily because these are the primary set of tyres that came with the car. So this car has Michelin Primacy 3ST tyres. So hopefully it's still got a couple thousand miles left in them before I need to start to consider a replacement. So let's sum up this video, or round up this video at least. What's happening for the next 10,000 miles? Now, I know I said in the previous video that I was in Sunderland. That actually was only temporary due to COVID and stuff like that. But hopefully this particular one is going to be a bit more permanent. So I'm actually going to be starting a new commute in September, which is approximately 70 miles there and back. So that's from Hull to Grimsby. I will put a map up here, and there is likely no remote working, so it will be a Monday to Friday thing. This is well within the range of the car at least, so I'm not really that worried, if I'm honest with you. I don't expect any issues. The only time when there may be a planned issue at least is, for example, if the Humber Bridge is closed. Now that's only happened twice, I think, in its history, and I think it's come up to 50th year anniversary actually. And there are a couple rapid charges in Grimsby if I do get caught short. For example, if a detour due to the bridge being closed happened, highly unlikely, but still a possibility, my distance travel will go from 70 miles there and back to around 160 miles, and there's no way I'll be able to do that when it's mostly motorway. One thing I will mention though is that although my amount of free charging will definitely decrease, coupled with the fact that I've moved to Octopus Go now, which is 5.5 pence per kilowatt hour, even at 3 miles per kilowatt hour, I'm looking at 1.7p a mile, which is really, really cheap motoring. I do have a Humber tag though, so it's £2.70 both ways. Not too bad really in the grand scheme of things. So, if you like the video or you found it informative, please like that video. If you dislike it, dislike the video. Please click on that bell icon and subscribe if you haven't already. The bell icon will give you notifications for any of the future videos that I do produce. But that's it. So, thank you for watching and talk to you later.